Nothing makes me happier than watching the Terrifier split somebody from the bottom up, or seeing vampires sing and dance to an Irish folk song like the Rocky Road to Dublin before they attack Michael B. Jordan. As long as I can remember, I've always been a fan of horror movies. Ever since I was a kid, I think the first horror movie I ever seen was Child's Play. And back then, Child's Play was one of those movies where you didn't know if it was funny or scary to the adults because you always seen them kind of laughing at every situation that would happen in the movie. But as a kid, Child's Play scared the living crap out of me. Like, I was afraid of this little doll that was swearing all over the place and attacking people. I thought he was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. This doll is over here attacking grown people and overpowering them. Back then you see something like that as a kid and you don't understand why the adults are finding it funny when you're so afraid of it. I mean, at the age I am now, I could obviously see why something like seeing a doll overpower a grown man doesn't make sense, obviously. But back then, things were different. At first, when I used to watch these movies like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, I was always afraid of it, and my parents used to always tell me I shouldn't watch it if I'm afraid of it, but I couldn't stop watching it, even though I would have nightmares right after. It wasn't until my dad got tired of me waking him up in the middle of the night to come sleep in the room with him and my mom that he finally decided to show me on TV that these things weren't real. He had me watch a horror movie and then basically showed me, hey, the actors that died in the movie, they're still alive today giving interviews. At that moment, it dawned on me that this wasn't real. Everything was fake. And I was able to enjoy horror movies for what they were. Not just something that was scary and would give you nightmares or creep you the hell out, but I enjoyed the genre more intimately for what it was. It made me realize that even though something was designed to be scary, you can still enjoy it and get a rush out of it. And that's what horror movies does for me. It gives me a rush and it makes me appreciate the directors and the writers and how they think. How can you come up with so many different ways that someone can possibly die? Or how can you come up with all these different stories? And a lot of these stories, ironically, are taken from real life events, which is interesting to say the least. And it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the day or the middle of the night. I can watch a horror movie at any time, at any place, and it really doesn't matter. Which that brings me to today. 2025, the year of horror movies. I feel like this year has given us so many great horror films, so many great projects, and we still have so much more to come. We've had things like The Sinners, we've had Bring Her Back, we've had Death of a Unicorn, even though I'm not really counting that as a horror. As a matter of fact, let's remove that out the equation. That movie should have probably never been made. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd, but that movie probably should have been something that they just kept to themselves. But we still had a lot of great movies this year. We had Together, we had Woman in the Yard, we had Until Dawn. I mean, I'm pretty sure I mentioned Final Destination Bloodline already. If not, we had that. We had the I Know What You Did Last Summer remake. We even had The Conjuring Last Rites. I feel like with all the horror films we had this year, I really have to talk about some of the ones that I really enjoyed the most. First, let's start off with Final Destination Bloodlines. I feel like Final Destination Bloodlines probably was my favorite horror movie throughout the year. And don't get me wrong, I know they had like a lot of horror movies that were great this year. But this is just my personal favorite because I am a Final Destination fanatic. I've watched every Final Destination, 1, 2, 3, all of them. And I really didn't think they could make another Final Destination that was actually gonna pique my interest. I really didn't think they could get back into the franchise and pick up where they left off. Bring us something new and something exciting, something fresh, something, just as interesting as the last. But with Final Destination Bloodline, I feel like they gave us exactly what we needed, exactly what we was hoping for. The movie was a great movie. I enjoyed it a lot. Everything about Final Destination Bloodline fed my hunger for horror. The saddest thing about the movie is that we lost a great legend, Tony Todd, RIP, and he will be missed. But I mean, he gave us some great dialogue before he left, and it was really good to see him one last time. I know a lot of you would probably put The Sinners above Final Destination, but for me, The Sinners would probably be the second best movie for me this year. And even though I don't mind seeing Michael B. Jordan playing two different roles, and Haley Steinfeld giving us the most viral clip of the year,
Because you told me you loved me.
Well, I told you to stay the fuck away from me too, but I guess you didn't hear that part.
we do have to acknowledge the fact that The Sinners was actually a musical. So there were a lot of songs in the movie. There were a lot of things that I felt kind of took away from it being a horror. Even though vampires are very scary, and the vampires in this were no exception. They were different. These vampires are not your Twilight vampires. They were very different. They were unique in their own way. Not to mention they were singing and dancing throughout the movie. But when you speak about The Sinners, you have to talk about the fact that this movie was a musical. And even though there were a few jump scares here and there, and the makeup artistry was top notch to say the least, I still can't put it above Final Destination Bloodline, especially with the intro scene of Final Destination Bloodline kicking off the way it did. I feel like that was one of the best intros of Final Destination we've ever gotten. But The Sinners was a good movie, and there's more to The Sinners than it just being a horror movie. You know, there's a lot of history to that movie. There's a lot of hidden messages behind the scenes. That's the type of movie that you watch and it leaves you with a conversation of, you know, what can happen next, or what will happen, or what might have happened. Till this very day, a lot of people still are arguing if Sammy sold his soul to the devil or not. So it just leaves you with more of a conversation than Final Destination Bloodlines would. If I had to put a third on my list, I would say that Weapons was pretty much up there. It was a really good movie, and I really did enjoy that movie nonetheless, even though I did do a review on Weapons, and I did state that it's one of those movies that you have to kind of sit through to understand what's going on. You're gonna have to basically sit through a lot of the story to really get the whole premise of what's happening in Weapons. But I'm one of those really patient people that I don't mind actually sitting through a movie and really, you know, getting hooked into what the people are talking about. You know, I don't mind sitting through a movie and taking in everything the people are talking about and soaking it up like a freaking sponge. You know, a lot of people might not have the patience to sit through a movie and a whole hour and a half and then wait for the last remaining few moments of the movie to actually see something exciting or scary happen. Don't get me wrong, there were a few jump scares in the movie, you know, like one or two, but it wasn't nothing really revolutionary. I mean, it might scare your grandma, but for me, it was just like, oh, this is something I've seen before. I guess the only thing I was really upset about was they didn't explain too much within the movie, so you kind of just had to figure a lot of stuff out for yourself. But what I really enjoyed about that movie was the way the director just brought everything all together. The way he filmed it, the way he shot the kids just running down the streets with their arms out. All of that just made the movie visually tantalizingly scary. And I really enjoyed that. I really love Together and I love Bring Her Back. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, I can't pick which one I love between the two of them. I feel like they were both equally just interesting and just thrilling and satisfying to watch. It gave us so much this year that I really just had to touch on the fact that this year had to have been the year of horror movies. And I'm really excited to see what the next following year brings. I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting a Smile 3 reveal. You know, will part 3 be the conclusion? Will we get a finale? Will there be more? There's just so many questions I have, and I can't wait to see the first trailer and really start diving into what they have planned for us. And while I'm recording this, The Conjuring Last Rites, that hasn't even come out yet, and I'm excited as heck for that. We're like maybe like 2 weeks away from The Conjuring Last Rites right now, and I'm just excited to see that and what they're going to do with that story. This is going to be the finale of The Conjuring, so there isn't going to be any more after this, but I'm very excited to see where they're going to take this story, Ed and Lorraine Warren, how they're going to, you know, end their chapter. There's just a lot going on, and it's really great to see that horror movies are getting so much love and so much support this year. I feel like we haven't had original horror content in a long time, and they've been giving us a lot of original horror movies. And that's kind of what we needed. You know, we have a lot of new directors that's been coming into the fray and, you know, making these horror movies. You know, the directors of Talk to Me, they're making a bunch of, you know, noise throughout the whole horror community. You know, so far they gave us Talk to Me, they gave us Bring Her Back, and these are very great movies. You know, Danny and Michael Filippo, they've been doing amazing work, and I can't wait to see what they have planned for the future. There are so many horror movies that I've watched this year, and I've really had to just really sit back and say, what made this year so special about horror movies? Why did this year be the year that horror movies decided to make such a big impact? Like, I really had to sit back and say, for the most part, every time I went to the movies this year, it was to see a horror movie. And I'm just like, this year has been really amazing. It's just crazy to know that we've got so much great horror films this year. It's almost sad to see the year almost come to a close, but like I said, we still got, I think, one more horror movie to go, The Conjuring, The Last Rites. I'm not sure if there's anything else that's supposed to be coming out, but for the most part, that's the biggest one for the rest of the year. My hope for 2026 is that we get a Smile 3 trailer somewhere along the line of that year, and I hope that we do get another Terrifier movie because that would be freaking awesome. But for this year, my appetite for horror movies have been filled, and I am satisfied, and I can honestly say that this has been the best year for me when it comes down to watching horror movies. So guys, why don't you tell me what you think? Is there any movie that you're looking forward to seeing in 2026? Do you have any hopes that something is going to come out like Smile 3, or is there anything that's on your horror wish list? And what was your favorite horror movie this year? I'd love to know about it. Leave it in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts, and once again, Thank you guys for watching. Till next time, I'm out.